of glory. We the Ambazonians pledge our loyalty. Praise the Son, our Savior, who granted us our freedom. Allegiance to the heroes who bought the land with their blood. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in the nation, flowing with milk and honey. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making this a nation, a joy forevermore. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our need. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our need. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of his nation.
The citizens of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia came out in their numbers to join the various African communities based in South Africa to call the attention of the international community to stop the slave trade practices currently going on in Libya.
Free Africa free!
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 The protest march called for by the African Diaspora Forum, a non-governmental organization based in Johannesburg, South Africa, led by its chairperson, Mark Gaffo, brought together members of different African community groups based in South Africa, leaders of political and social groups, NGOs, civil society organizations, and traditional rulers. We caught up with Mark Gaffo to find out from him what inspired the protest march.
Okay, we've learned the past few weeks that in parts of our continent, the youth has been auctioned. People are being sold like you can go to an open market and buy some goat. Africans, the people of the world, are coming together today to say we need to stop this in Libya. About 700,000 people have been trapped in Libya, and they are there because they want to take the route of the Mediterranean. And we know that every single year about 3,000 people are perishing in the Mediterranean. So we are here to make a call to our leaders, our structures like your African Union, the Pan-African Parliament, the United Nations, and so on, to come with a clear agenda to address this issue. We cannot accept today, at the 21st century, to allow this happening in our continent. We know that because of very bad governance, our youth is losing hope to the continent, and we should give hope to that youth. We should be able to tell to the youth that they have a future of the continent. People know very well when they take the route of the Mediterranean, they're going to perish. As I've said earlier, about 3,000 people are dying in the Mediterranean every single year. But they're taking that route because they know back home there is no hope. And that's what we are trying to do, to make sure that that message goes across the youth and give them hope that they can make a living in the continent and they can have a future in the continent. We need to address the issues of good governance, the issues of human rights abuse, and so on and so forth. Those are the challenges that the continent has, and we need to address this. Cannot allow slavery in our continent. We cannot remember this bad and very negative memory of slavery in our continent. We want to stop it, and Africans should come. We will voice out that we stop it, and we stop it now. The people, the culprits who were practicing this should be arrested, and the youth which is trapped in Libya should be released and sent back to their countries of origin. From the images and the messages that we've been reading, we know that many Cameroonians were trapped in Libya, and because they didn't have hope to Cameroon, it's unfortunate that after so many years, President Biya is still there and is still making Cameroon as his farm. Those are the issues that we should talk about, because Biya is not from Europe. He's a Cameroonian, he's an African, but he is there and no one else can come into power. He doesn't want to draw in some new blood, and those are the real issues that we should address.
The march that began from Burger Park through the city streets of Pretoria to the Union Building saw the participants chanting, naming and shaming the UN, AU, EU and African leaders to be responsible for the root causes of the present slave trade in Libya, especially in the 21st century.
Down with slavery, down! Down! Down with slavery, down! Down! Down with oppression, down! Down! Down with oppression, down! Down! Down with exploitation, down!
Down! Shame on AU! Shame on AU! Shame on all South Africa leaders! Shame on all African leaders! Shame on AU! Shame on AU! Shame on African leaders! Shame on African leaders! Shame on African leaders! Shame on African leaders! We not for sale! We not for sale! Down with slavery, down! Down with slavery, down! Down with slavery, down! Down with slavery, down! Shame on you, Africa! Shame on you, Africa!
No, no, slavery, no!
No, no, slavery, no!
No, no, slavery, no!
Yes, yes, Africa, yes!
Yes, yes, Africa, yes!
The people of Ambazonia came together as one man to join the fight against slavery in Africa and to call down on dictators in Africa and the killing and genocide being committed in southern Cameroon.
During the protest march, the group from the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, led by Mr. Milton Tucker, Secretary of State in charge of Communications and IT, and Mrs. Jessie Etame, who is the ambassador of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia in Southern African region, SADC, addressed the population.
Freedom of Africa free! Freedom of Africa free! Amandla! Amandla!
We stand here to call out dictators. We stand here to call out genocide perpetrators in Africa to order, to say that we are not going to sit back and watch our women being raped, watch our men being killed. If you can look at the banner right behind me, that is exactly what is happening in Ambazonia right now as I speak. Yes. It is not a thing of yesterday. It is not a thing of the past. As I speak right now, military are invading homes, breaking into people's homes, shooting young men, raping young women. We have about 40,000 refugees who have fled southern Cameroon into neighboring country of Nigeria. A lot of them are pregnant women, a lot of them are children under 15 years old. And we are saying that as a democratic country, South Africa, and especially the AU, they need to stand up and defend what they preach every day. We applaud them. We applaud them for all the rights they've given us as immigrants into this country, but we are saying we cannot keep fleeing from this tyrant into South Africa. We cannot keep fleeing our homes. Our men cannot keep being killed every day, and our women raped, and we are killed and thrown into dungeons. As it stands right now, we are calling on South Africa and the AU to sanction Libya economically, to sanction Libya politically, to sanction Libya in every possible way until this slavery stops. We are calling on South Africa and we are calling on the AU to sanction La République du Cameroon. We are calling on South Africa, the AU and SADC and the EU for that matter to sanction La République du Cameroon until the genocide that is perpetrated on Ambazonians stop. We are calling on all the representatives that preach peace in Africa to walk the talk. They should start protecting Africans from tyrants. The AU should stop having conferences and still letting our people die by tyrants. They should start protecting us. And this starts with tyrants like those we have in Libya and those we have in La République du Cameroon. In Congo as well, we have them all over Africa. As it stands right here, right now, we as Africans are going to rise. If the AU that we have put our faith in fails to take out these dictators and of these tyrants, the people of Africa will rise and they will fight. They will fight with everything they've got. We have been fighting and we will keep fighting until what is ours is rightfully given to us. We're calling on all the dictators in Ethiopia, in Congo, in DRC, wherever they are. We are calling on them to respect human rights. We are calling on them to respect international boundaries. We are calling on them to stop annexing and colonizing other African nations. We are calling on them to stop slave trade. We are saying that our women are not commodities to be sold. Our women are not commodities to be prostituted. And our people are intelligent enough, our people are strong enough, our people are resourceful enough to run Africa. And run Africa to be the greatest continent in the whole wide world. Viva Africa, viva! Africa, viva! Thank you very much.
Amongst some of the unionists who took part in the march and also addressed the population was the former president of COSATU, Swalizima Vavi.
Thank you to all of you for coming today in your numbers to show our collective disgust to the slavery happening in our own continent in the 21st century, as if we are still trapped in 400, 500, 600 years ago. Shame on the Libyan crisis and shame. We are gathering here today to submit the memorandums to the African Union, to the Libyan authorities, to all of the African leaders to say to them, we blame you for allowing conditions that Africans in 2017 will continue to be sold for a mere $400 to the new slave owners right below your own noses whilst you are snoozing in your offices. We are blaming you for creating conditions that Africans continue to drown in the Mediterranean Sea as they run away from their continent in search of conditions that are better than you provide to your own people. These people drowned in the sea in their thousands as they seek greener pastures elsewhere in Europe. And yet, you are presiding on a continent, the richest in every respect, the most endowed in mineral resources, but more importantly, the most endowed with human resources, which you have allowed to scatter all over the world because you do not take care of your own. Because instead of you guarding the mineral resources, you have allowed the imperialist forces to come and invade the African continent for the benefit of the few conglomerates from Europe and from America who continue to plunder the resources of our continent for the benefit of the few of their families. That's why today we are saying to every African leader, shame on you. And that Patrice Lumumba dreamed that one day Africa will rise and write its own history, will one day come as the truth to all of us, and that we will not rest, we will not sit in our laurels until those prophetic words of Patrice Lumumba one day are realized by every African in this continent.
Speaking on behalf of African traditional rulers, the chief from Limpopo province in South Africa called on African traditional rulers to be united to fight slavery in all forms in their communities.
Shame on you, African leaders. Shame on you, African leaders, for allowing this trade with your own people. Today, we must make sure that this trade of selling our own people, this slave trade, must come to an end. Yes. The African Union, you are a shame to the people of this continent. Yes. Today, we are saying we are united, and I'm calling on all African leaders, especially the traditional leaders of the continent, to unite to fight against slavery.
He also warned the Libyan authorities and community not to allow Africans to visit history.
And I want to remind Libya that where they are, it is not their country. They are an invading force. We will unite as African and make sure that we deal with them.
While coordinating the activities of the day, the chairperson of ADF, African Diaspora Forum, read out the memorandum to all present before handing it over to the representatives of EU, AU, and the presidency of the Republic of South Africa.
This is the time for African Union to show continental leadership and let the world know that we denounce and condemn this violation of human rights perpetrated against fellow Africans. We demand that we demonstrate collective leadership and our concern as Africans about the slave trade and human trafficking in Libya. We also demand that the African Union develops a consistent, comprehensive, and well-coordinated mobilization program that will free our fellow Africans in captivity. We hold you accountable for the freedom of the African people who have been held in captive. The African Union to host an urgent meeting with the Libyan authorities to address the crisis. From the United Nations, we hold the United Nations accountable according to the Charter of the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, which seeks to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large or small. From the Pan-African Parliament, as an oversight body for the African government, we urge you to exert pressure on the African Union, the North African Economic Region, and the Libyan authorities to uphold values enshrined in the African Charter for People and Human Rights, the Banjul Charter. To the Libyan authorities, that you stop with immediate effect the slave trade in your backyard, that you take measures to ensure that such atrocities do not occur anymore within your borders, that you bring the perpetrators and their cohorts to book to face the full might of the law with immediate effect. We wish to remind you that this heinous act do not have a place in the 21st century, and that
We, the people of the world in general and African in particular, find this practice reprehensible. From the European Union to protect the human rights and dignity of African migrants, allow safe, responsible, and legal migration. African migrants to be welcomed the same way we welcome the European tourists or businessmen in Africa. Protect African asylum seekers and refugees who are willing to enter Europe. The European Union must organize a public forum with civil society organizations and social formations to explore and develop effective strategies and programs of action to deal with the crisis. We are calling upon the European Union to invest in our youth when they are still alive than when they are perishing in the Mediterranean Sea. The European Union must know that the refugee crisis can be greatly scaled down when it stops supporting dictators on the continent and invading countries, thus creating fertile ground for terrorists to operate in a safe haven like in Libya. We call on European government and those who help create chaos in Libya to do the right thing and partner with the African Union and the first step to ending the shameful trade of human beings.
At the end of the program, we caught up with Milton Tucker and J.C. Etame, who had this to say.
It's a terrible thing in this day and age for Africans to observe and learn that human beings are being sold for as little as $400 US. When we look back at our story as Ambazonians over the last 56 years, and particularly over the last 14 months, we have no doubt that in the slaves that have been sold in Libya, so many of them must be Ambazonians following the terrorist and genocidal acts of the La Republic colonizers and occupiers. So as the Ambazonian community in South Africa, we were very blessed to have an opportunity to participate in this match so that we are able to get the world know that while they're looking at Libya, they must not forget to look next door at Ambazonia where even worse things are happening. Just to give you an example, with Colonial Senior Divisional Officer for Manu, Joseph Omdurm, giving an order for our people to leave their homes and communities within 6 hours maximum, and that leading to thousands of our citizens flogging into Nigeria as refugees, many more, hundreds being caught and illegally locked up, many more smoked out of their houses for no crime and being killed in front of police stations. We wanted the world to know that the Ambazonian story is an unstoppable story, that our journey to freedom is unquenchable. A test for our own freedom and land is unquestionable, and we are producing so many slaves that are going into Libya that have been forced out of their country even before the crisis by the hopelessness presented by the La Republic du Cameroon government of Yaoundé. So yes, the message to the world is, do not forget Ambazonia, do not forget the former British Southern Cameroons. Our people are suffering, we have suffered for too long, and Ambazonia must be free. What we're seeing out of Libya is a product of recolonization, the decisions that were made in European and American boardrooms that were intended to, in quotes, take out a dictator. How do you bring democracy and at the end of it you create slavery? So Europe and America must take full responsibility, and they are accountable for the mess in Libya. And any African leader that supported the madness of these cartels taking over or killing Gaddafi, that has now led to the creation of cartels equally funded by some of these powers, must be roundly condemned. But most importantly, we must seriously condemn African presidents for their misrule and misleadership, because those are the production houses of slavery in Libya. It's the hopelessness that lies in the face of the youths that are being born into these countries that have no future apart from dreaming to get into other countries where they will get greener pastures, and unfortunately that leads them into a trap in Libya created by a world system that must seriously be relooked at. It's not working. If the UN is not working, if the AU and the EU are not working, we must sit around the table and seriously rethink and restructure. It is a must. Libya and Iraq are classic examples. Of course, the Southern Cameroons is an example. Genocide taking place and the world remains silent.
Because we were forced out due to economic and political reasons. And all I can tell our fellow Ambazonians is that we have to fight. We have to keep fighting until we go back home. And as the Ambazonian ambassador to SADC, we need to make friends with our SADC counterparts. We need to make friends with our SADC political powers to ensure that they continue to protect us from tyrants, to continue to protect us from La République du Cameroon, until such a time when they will be able to support us for us to actually fully and completely reclaim our land. I know that things are hard from where we're coming from. I know the need for greener pasture is so high that we would want to risk anything and everything in order to get it, but we have to be careful. We have to research, we have to find out things so that we do not land ourselves into a prostitution gang or cartel. We have to, in as much as we're looking for a better way of life, at the same time we shouldn't risk our lives and the lives of our kids and the lives of our families in doing that. So to the Libyan authority, I would say that an abuse on women is disgusting, it's not welcomed. An abuse on women is something that nobody will condone, and we are going to fight that. We're going to fight the continuous prostitution of our women. We're going to fight the continuous abuse that is perpetuated on our women and brothers. And the EU cannot be silent. We're going to call on all these organizations that in as much as we are condemning the slavery in Libya, we particularly want them to protect the women that find themselves in this country. We want them, if they can, get all these people who are in Libya repatriated, and Libya should be sanctioned.
We shall overcome one day. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome one day. Glory, we the Ambazonians pledge our loyalty. Praise to our Savior who granted us the freedom. Our legends to the hero who bore the lonely diablo. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in a nation flowing with earth and holy. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Ambazonians.